And we're live.
All right.
What's up, my friend? So, let's see here. Let me pull the volume down. Okay. So, welcome to the first episode of Gotham City Chronicles. This is the episode where we will be going over one of the most quintessential Batman stories ever. And that's Batman Year One from Mr. Frank Miller. So I want to say hey to my co-host JP's Budget Collecting.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Am I not coming up? So
I see you.
Oh, okay. So just on my screen, it stayed on you, but that's
there. Yeah, there you are.
That super lag. It looks like on my.
Yep. What else?
Yeah,
what else is new with YouTube?
Oh, you live in the land of lag, but we got John and White Whale in the chat already. So
What's up?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. When we first started talking about doing a Batman series, it was, and we were debating on what to do first, and you were like, Year One, and I was like, well, duh, that was really easy. I was like, oh, what should we do?
I know, because when I think about the Batman stories that I have a passion for, like, this always emerges near the top, if not to the top for me personally. So it's kind of, for me, it's kind of like comic book comfort food or something, you know? Like, I kind of have worn out, several different trade paperbacks of this thing, and it's kind of traveled with me. And has just been sort of like a good friend to me over the years on this particular story, and I kind of like keep going back to it. So I had to go with this one. I'm glad you agreed.
No, it's so good. It's definitely one of my favorites, and it's without a doubt my favorite of. Not even close. It's maybe my all-time favorite Batman story, but it's definitely my favorite of the Frank Miller stories.
Yeah, me too.
And that I don't even think it's necessarily particularly close, but it is. Yeah, it's just such a good story. It does a great job. It's everything Batman I think should be in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
and yet it doesn't necessarily like focus. And we'll get into the story a little more in a minute, but it's also very much not just his story. So, and I
absolutely, yeah. Part. So some more people are joined here. We got Discovery Bay. What's up, JB? JB. We got Bake the Snake. What's up, Tommy? We got Just a Rican. Hey, Rod. Comic Geek McD. What's going on? White Whale's reminding us that David Mazzucchelli just kills it on this, and he's totally right about that. There's some panels in this book that I just get like, I don't know, like chills or shivers or something, like when I flip that page, and it's, oh man, he really does it for me on this story. So thanks everybody for stopping by. I hope you guys are all big Batman fans, Batman Year One fans. Let us know in the chat if this is a story that you've read. I mean, some of you guys I know you have read it or own it, have trades or hardcovers or whatever. Even single issues potentially. Michael Stewart just said that dinner scene gives me goosebumps. Yeah, for sure. That's an epic scene. So, but let us know in the chat if this is something that you guys are, familiar with, or if it's something that you are less familiar with, or whatever, so we can kind of gauge who the audience is here as we go. What's up, Comic Lover Omega? John says, I don't know this story, but Kate is very, very aware now. Nice. So you want to set the scene a little bit? I mean, this book came out, 1987? So that's 32 years ago. So yeah. I was 3 years old. So can't say I picked it up off the shelf for my LCS, but but I do have a set here of the single issues. So I got 407, or not 407. 407 is the last issue. This is 404, 405, 406, and 407.
Yeah, so this is all pre my memory of Batman, because, like, in terms of reading comics, my real introduction to Batman was Batman 89 was the movie, and I didn't really start reading any of the comics till after that.
That was my first exposure as well.
So
to the character.
I didn't like. I knew about. I do not have the single issues. I actually almost picked them up at PlanetCon. A guy had a decent deal on 1, 3, and 4, but he didn't have number 2, so I didn't do it. But I probably should have just went on and got 1, 3, and parts 1, 3, and 4. But
so I picked up this. This is a nice, like, super high grade set.
Yeah.
You know, I picked this up New York Comic Con last year. It was definitely on my hunt list or goal list for that con. But I've had the single issues for a while before that, just like rattier kind of, you know, reader copies, right, if you will, like not slab worthy grades. But I've had probably three different printings of the trade paperback, which has been sort of my go-to way of reading it for a long time. So yeah.
It's just a whole contained story.
Yeah, that's the last printing of it that I got. I think it's like the eighth printing or something like that. So that's the one I've been sort of tearing up for the past, you know, whatever, 2 years or however long it's been. So White Whale says, I actually don't own the single issues. Hashtag I am ashamed.
Well, he's not the only one. I need to work on that too. Technically, this would predate the Batman issue I own, which is kind of sad, but needs to be fixed. But
so I mean, wait. So how long before year 1 did The Dark Knight Returns come out? Do we know that at the top of our heads?
Not off the top of my head.
Quick search.
See, I don't know. I thought this actually came out before The Dark Knight Returns because they talk about it.
So
the pre-phase.
So 86. So the Dark Knight Returns actually came out in 86.
Okay, yeah.
And Frank Miller, part of the deal that Frank Miller made, or maybe it was an extension to his deal, was that after The Dark Knight Returns, that he would write an origin story for Batman. And Frank Miller's original intention for year 1 was to make it a graphic novel that had nothing to do with DC continuity.
Right.
So you know, Frank, the Dark Knight Returns was released as a standalone graphic novel. It wasn't like Batman issue 370 or whatever. You know what I mean? It was standalone and not considered part of DC continuity. It was its own universe. So by the time year 1 came around, his original by the time the project came around and it was time for him to do it for DC, Denny O'Neil was the DC publisher, so he was the one that he was working with on it essentially, and he basically convinced Frank, no, it's okay, let's do it as part of, you know, let's serialize it, make it part of the core Batman series. And originally, the original idea was that to reboot Batman and make it volume 2, so it would have been like Batman issue 1, volume 2, right. But they didn't do that because Frank basically decided that that he wasn't gonna retcon his origin completely. He was just going to expand upon it, right? And basically focus on different aspects of it that Bob Kane and Bill Finger didn't necessarily focus on, right?
Right.
So he wasn't going to throw away 40, 50 odd years of Batman DC continuity, but he wasn't going to get to do it as a standalone graphic novel. So he had to find that fine line and sort of build it in as Batman issue 404, 405, 406, and 407, which I find kind of fascinating how that process went down. I mean, obviously it's a different era, and you know, The Dark Knight Returns was so popular, right? Just a year and change beforehand, that the fact that he was now writing the main Batman title and telling the origin story, or a reimagined version of the origin story, it lit up Batman's sales. So like, I think Batman was like hovering around 75,000 copies a month total. Like, you know, in its at its lowest in the 80s, or like mid 80s. And for this 4-issue run on newsstands, I think it averaged like 190 to 200,000 copies per issue.
Wow.
on this year one run. So that just goes to show you how like the right, you know, writer and in this case artist combination, because he didn't want to have the, you know, double dip duty that he had with The Dark Knight Returns, doing the art and the story, right? He wanted to team up with somebody, and to White Whale's point earlier, I think David Mazzucchelli just killed it with this. You know what I mean? Like, I prefer the art in this to Dark Knight Return, to Frank's art personally.
I agree. I prefer, like, I like Frank's stuff, but it's very specific, I guess is the right way. Like, and for this story particularly, I am so glad that he didn't do it and that Mazzucchelli did, because his art fits this story so well. I can't imagine reading this story without this art.
I agree 100%.
Like, they go together so well. You know, or some scenes we'll get into as we get into the story a little bit. Like, there's just scenes in this book that are just some of my favorite Batman panels ever.
Dude, yeah. Like, I mean, I don't want to jump the gun too much, but what was that one panel where he's sitting on the bed with where Gordon, and before I even say this panel, like, this is almost just as much Gordon's story as it is Bruce Wayne Batman's story, or even more. You know,
more time with Gordon over the course.
I agree, but I don't know what page it is. I think it's page 30.
You do with Bruce? Yeah, I just had it a second ago, and
is that so? It's part of what issue? Is that part of issue 1 or issue 2?
Page 30. It's later. It's right after.
So it's part of issue 2. So it's that scene where he's sitting on the bed and he's like, how did I let this happen? How did I screw up so badly to bring an innocent child to life in a city without hope? And then that next panel is that sort of the first scene ever, I mean, in theory, in continuity, of Bruce bearing the suit out in the world at night, taking care of business. And that really, I mean, that panel gives me chills. And there are several moments like that throughout this story that gives me that same feeling.
Oh yeah, this is the panel. Yeah,
that panel, exactly. Yeah, that panel
right there. So another one I was thinking of that's a little later. That's a really good panel too. But yeah, those two panels on top of each other are just so perfect.
Dude, I mean, can you imagine what the original art for that would bring?
Yeah.
I don't dare even try to research that, because it would. I would go down a deep hole.
There's a truth to that.
Excuse me. Still got my my cough lingering here, so I'm gonna pop a Ricola before I get too crazy.
So, anything else to get into our? I mean, we started down that road a little bit, into our favorite parts, and just kind of work through it a little bit.
Yeah, go for it. Why don't you go next, and then I'll pull up another piece if you don't take the one I'm thinking of.
Oh, just like my favorite scenes.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, there's that scene, and then the other one that just is my favorite, maybe my favorite Batman panel ever is, of course, the dinner after he blows through the wall.
Yeah.
He comes in, and just that panel, and I don't know how well it shows up on my camera, but it just
yeah, that's good.
I just love that panel so much, and I mean, it's a scene that they've stolen from so many times. You've seen it in animated shows and movies, and then you've seen it in, I mean, they use it in Batman Begins, and there's so many things in this story that have been reused and referenced.
Oh, yeah.
Have become such an integral part of Batman lore.
Not only within other mediums like the Nolan trilogy, but in other stories like The Long Halloween and other, essentially other Batman writers have, been inspired by this story, I would say, almost more than any other one.
Yeah.
For me, another sort of key moment is in issue 3, when he uses the hypersonic mechanism under his boot or whatever to call the bats from the cave, and and as soon as Gordon says a cheer goes up, they've made a hero out of him, and then the cheering disintegrates, and then you see like the sunrise, the picture of the bats with the sun in the distance. It's just another one of those like chill-inducing moments for me, and when I read this story every time.
So yeah, and then before we go on to the next one, John's got a question here. He's saying, what do you guys think about the evolution of Flash? Flash from this story to the Nolan story, and I don't think they did as good a job in the Nolan story of bringing that aspect. Like the best parts, and not that we're making it about this movie, but the best parts of this movie come directly from this, without a doubt.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, frankly, I've read Year One more times than I've seen Batman Begins.
Yeah.
And usually it's kind of the other way around with comics. Like you've seen or like at least with some Batman comics anyway. Like, I can't say that about every Batman story, but in this case, I can say that. So I tend to remember this character arc or version of Flash versus the Nolan one. So got a couple more people join here. What's up, Biggie Shaq? Good to see you, bro. And then Cody Jones. What's going on? Thanks for stopping by.
So yeah, and I would agree. Like my take home from that is this version is a much more fleshed out and well-rounded Flash. Like
yeah,
they don't really use him as well as they should in the movie. I don't think. And you don't have some of the interactions with him and Gordon that are critical to Gordon's side of the story and getting Gordon to the position where he is at the end of the story, because early on he's out to catch.
Well, he's the first. Yeah, he's the first kind of, he's the first character that enters the storyline that you're not so sure about. You know what I mean? Like he's introduced as not necessarily the main protagonist, but the initial, the initial like mini protagonist for Gordon. That that he's trying to figure out. This guy, like what is this guy all about? But let me hang back and let me not go overboard like I've done in the past to rat out a cop. You know what I mean?
And there's this great scene on page 5, like right at the beginning. It kind of lays that dynamic out, because it opens with both of them returning to Gotham. Like Gordon, this is kind of his last chance, and Bruce is coming back to begin his quest. And right off the bat, Flash comes to get him, and there's this great scene at the beginning, like where he just stops and basically roughs up these kids. And it's Gordon knows, like right off the bat, and you see him like watching him, like, and he's like, I'm not going to take him down I'm not going to make that mistake of going after him too soon. But I memorize every move for future reference.
Future reference, yeah. I love that for future reference line. And when I first saw the animated movie adaptation with Bryan Cranston, and Bryan Cranston voices Detective Gordon in the DC animated version, which is an incredibly faithful adaptation to the book. If you've never seen it, I highly suggest.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. Really good.
It's incredible. It's on the DC Universe app for streaming also. But that line is just genius. For future reference, and like the sly way that he says it, it's delivered so well.
It's just a really good interaction, and it puts you in his mind right off the bat, because he knows the kind of place he's coming to.
Yeah,
like, he knows that most of the cops in this town are probably dirty, and that there's a lot that he's fighting an uphill battle. But he's also not going to be. He's going to be careful about how he deals with the corruption he's going to see.
Yeah.
But he already knows that his partner is probably going to be a future problem, and we're just right at the beginning of the story.
Right, like, and and Cody Jones. I like how Cody Jones mentions he's like, I love how Gordon whoops Flash like a savage. That scene is it like, I don't know, is it snowing or is it's in a snowy like wooded bank area, right? Where he swerves the car off the road or whatever.
Yeah,
and leaves them naked in the dust or whatever. It's like that's a great scene.
in chapter 1, like where basically Gordon's already like alienated.
It is, yeah.
Cops enough that they like basically, you know, rough him up to try to get him in line, and he basically goes back after Flash, and
there's just so much stuff.
Fast. I love like when he runs him off the road, and he throws. He's like, he's a Green Beret. He needs
a handicap.
He throws fat before and this whole page where they fight in the shadows and in the snow. It's just so well done. Like, again, Mazzucchelli's art is just so good. That whole thing, you know, he whoops him good.
I mean, you know, it's the story's called Year One, and every issue approximately happens over about 3-month time frame, like when you actually analyze it. So it's fairly evenly spaced. But I would argue that more happens in the first issue of Year One than happens in like many entire arcs of comic book stories. It's amazing. It's incredible how much story he fit into that first issue. It's incredible.
The whole storyline of Gordon like finding his place is all in the first chapter. All meeting Flash to their showdown at the end of the chapter. Meanwhile, you have the whole thing of Bruce going from not sure what he's going to do, like making his little adventure out onto the street,
right?
And like,
yeah, because by the end of the first issue, you have the classic moment of another moment that sort of gives me chills is like where he's like, "Okay, Father, I know what to do." You know what I mean?
That breaks through. I mean, you get all of that in the first chapter.
It's great. It's so much happens in that first issue.
It's just that scene with the bat coming through the window. It's just so classic at this point that it's just And
all right. So before we get back into the story, I want to do a quick aside. What's your favorite cover? Like,
favorite cover.
So for me, it is literally that second issue because the bat has crashed. You know, the bat has crashed through the window. He knows he needs to be Batman. And then you have, you know, the cover to the second issue of the story arc being this cover. That's my favorite one of the four.
Yeah, I'm 4 up here.
But I'm also very partial to 407, where you have Gordon and Batman on the cover.
I think 2 and 4 are definitely the best, and I agree with you. I like 2 as my favorite of the covers.
Yeah.
I think it's the best one. The light behind him. And it's the one where I think they had the weird header at the time, like the giant bat, you know, they had that weird header at the time, but it actually works with that cover.
Yeah, it strangely works perfectly for that cover. It looks like it's you know, it looks like it's part of that cover design and not a header.
Yeah. I think that's the one that he uses it the best. Now he also uses it really well in 4 when he makes it white.
That's right. Yep, that's right.
Those are the 2 that he uses it the best. The other times it's just really like, I mean, in issue 1 he basically makes it where you can't see it. He just ignores it and puts all the light and focus on the bottom. But that is definitely. I think that's definitely the best cover
for sure. So we are in agreement on that.
But there's another thing from the first issue that I think is just funny that's become like a running thing. It's really it's not necessarily throwaway, but it's part of the whole scene where Bruce basically makes his big mistake and gets in a fight and ends up getting shot by the cops. But it's his first scene where he fights Selina.
For sure.
Like, and they meet on the street. And if you've read any of the recent Tom King run, that's their big argument about when they first met.
Right.
It was on the street versus historically the first time he met her was on a boat. Like the original Batman series, the first where she appears, she's a thief on a boat. So it's the running argument between them which one happened first. And I just think it's fun that they pull.
Well, there's also a running argument of where Year One currently falls in DC continuity because they did that whole 0 year thing in New 52, right? So I don't know. You know,
I think it's fun that they like other writers. It shows you how much they've latched on to. Like Tom King's latched on to that little moment,
right?
To make it this running argument about when they actually first met.
That's true.
So
That's true.
it's just kind of a fun thing to me that like happens in this story.
And you also get to witness like a complete retelling of the origin of Catwoman, essentially,
Right.
in this story arc. So you get to see the origin of Detective Gordon in Gotham City, not necessarily of Jim Gordon entirely as a person, but you get to see that, and then you also get to see Batman. You also get to see Catwoman. So definitely a lot packed into these 4 issues from that standpoint.
So, so where in the story do you want to go next? That you think is just?
I don't know. I mean, like, I think the story. I mean, the story moves pretty quickly from issue 1 to like issue 3. Like the main things that happen in issue 2 are the like Batman getting experience being Batman. Right? He's out in the streets. He's out in the streets. He's he's making waves and he's getting the cops' attention. And the cops are all sitting around, sort of debating what this guy is. Is he an animal? Is he a what is he, vigilante? What is he? And then that scene where essentially where Flash has to tell his quote unquote horror story of being attacked by this animal for a drug bust that he's trying to break up, even though it's actually a drug bust that he's like leading, or there's a drug deal that he's like leading.
Yeah, the whole thing is sort of like Gordon mocking him the whole time, but keep going, Flash.
Right. Yeah. So, and then you quickly get to the dinner scene from there, where it's basically Gotham's elite, Gotham's, the people in charge, if you will, from the commissioner to the mayor to the councilman to Falcone, right, is there also. So, and Cody Jones just said his first night out was classic. How he made so many mistakes. Exactly, for sure. Right. It was cool to see that, and basically that leads to the moment that you talked about earlier, where he's like, your time has come. None of you are safe. You know what I mean? And that iconic shot, and then from there it progresses to like some more sort of quick side stories. Like you see a snapshot over here of Gordon trying to trap Batman with Sarah Essen, muggings on the street, and then it cuts to a shot of Falcone all tied up, and a story about how he like Batman's put his rolls in the pier or something like that, right? And then almost instantaneously you get to the scene where Batman saves the lady in front of the truck or whatever, and that's how Gordon and Batman get introduced in real life for the first time, when you think about it, right? Yeah. So, and that's when he takes off running, gets shot, and that essentially leads you to the 3rd issue, which is the big sort of action scene of the story arc, right? And which is most of issue 3 is that sort of battle, if you will, with what is it, Brennan, right?
Yeah.
Or Brendan, not Brennan, Brendan. Yeah, Brandon. And so maybe you want to talk about that part of the story a little bit, because that's essentially the part where Gordon starts changing his tune and starts understanding who Batman is, and he's like, oh wait, like, is this guy really worse off than the people I'm dealing with? You know what I mean?
Right.
And he starts to have that sort of moral dilemma.
Yeah, so it basically opens, like, if you see the end of issue 2 and the beginning of issue 3 is they've got him trapped in the building, and they basically firebomb this building because they're just gonna sorry, my thing froze, but because they're just gonna take him out. They're not interested in capturing him. They're not interested in anything. They just want him eliminated completely, and so you see the whole thing, and it's drawing all the attention. But you see, like, Gordon's whole thought process during this whole time while they're trying to catch him in this building. So after they burn the building down, they actually go in looking for him. And during the thing, he's lost his belt, so he's down to just a few things, and you start to really see like he's having to outthink them why he's in there. Like these guys are all, you know, the guys that go in, Brandon and his crew are all muscle and bullets and not much brain. And so, but the whole time as Gordon's on the outside, just like, you know, we only courted him because he saved an old woman's life. And, you know, he's thinking through what this guy actually is and what he's trying to do. So,
right. And he also kind of pokes fun at the commissioner a little bit. And he's like, I can't go in there. You know what I mean? Like, I've been ordered not to do anything.
Like, basically, Batman's like trapped him and he's like picking them apart. And Merkel, who's like one of the few cops that Gordon actually trusts, is like, he needs help. and he's like, we can't help, orders. And it's just, you know.
And then you also have, and I'm going to say what's up to Collectible Paper, who joined us in the chat as well. What's up, dude?
Paper.
So they also have that kind of funny sort of, you know, interaction with Selina. I don't know if it's the stray cat or Selina's cat, but the cat is kind of interject itself into the panels.
Right.
And you know, and Selina shows up to the scene, you know.
And he's like getting shot at in this building, and he keeps trying to save this cat, and eventually throws it out the window, and Gordon sees him do it, trying to like help this cat escape from these idiots that are just shooting at anything that moves.
Yeah.
And
but it all comes to a climactic head when like he's essentially just about to get obliterated by shotguns or whatever.
Yeah.
And
you talked about earlier.
Yeah, the bats what is even called? Like a swarm? Is it a bat swarm?
What did he call it now? I forget. Sensitive to all of them.
Swarm is the only way I can sort of describe it in my head.
Just like they come in and you see the scene where they come in and they're blocking out the sun, and then the next couple of panels are just all these bats.
Yeah, they're just swarming all over the place.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how long it took to draw that?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think Bake kind of has it right. Flock of bats.
There you go.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and then that leads them on like a chase, right? Where he's become mobile all of a sudden. They're chasing him with a helicopter or whatever. But they lose him.
In the movie, and the thing basically.
Oh, that's in the movie.
Yeah, that's and they're basically the commissioner and the detective like pursue him, and he like somehow gets away from him, and they drive.
You're freezing up on me
here.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, basically it's Gordon laughing about that, and so, but at this point he's been wounded enough; he has to go into hiding. But we've seen the detective Essen has basically put Gordon on the trail of Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, she's pretty.
And that's sort of when a little bit of controversial stuff happens as it relates to Gordon's character.
Right.
But, although there is this one panel in that chase where there's a guy sitting next to Commissioner Loeb with like the headphones on. That's why I thought the helicopter was a faithful adaptation thing.
Oh, maybe it is.
Yeah. I think it is. It doesn't. The helicopter itself doesn't get its own panel, but it's assumed that they're in one based on that little panel in the corner. Anyway, that's not important. What is important is that they go through maybe like a 3 to 4 page arc, maybe 5 or 6 page arc, where you see Detective Essen and Gordon getting closer and closer and closer, and then, you know, ultimately, you know, succumbing to their flirtation, right, or whatever's going on between the two of them, which leads to a little bit of a sort of, you know, I guess, you know, Gordon's human. You know, he's not just he's just not this super cop. Like, he's got his own conflicted emotions, especially with, you know, his wife about to have a baby and everything, and then all this drama going on with, you know, internal affairs and stuff like that, you know, in the police department, plus what he's trying to figure out with Batman. Like, he's got so much going on in his life that he finds comfort in his colleague.
Yeah.
Right?
And it leads to this great shot at the end of the 3rd chapter of him and his struggles with where he's at, both personally and, you know, professionally, because he's talking about how he should be begging his wife for forgiveness, but all he's thinking about is the bat. And, you know, he's like, he's a criminal, I'm a cop, it's that simple. But he saved that old woman. He saved that cat. He even paid for the suit. And the gun gets heavier. And the hunk of metal in my hands is heavier than ever. And he's trying to, you know, he's struggling with what is actually the right decision here. Should he be doing in a city where, you know, where the mayor and the commissioner use the police as hired killers? He says in that same thing, you know, where there's so much corruption, is this the guy he should really be going after?
Right. Which ultimately he changes gears, you know what I mean, and figures out a way to work together with him, which, you know, is sort of the way that the story concludes, and it leaves you hanging. I mean, we're not quite there yet as far as like the retelling, but I mean, that's the ultimate takeaway of the story, is that, you know what I mean, is that they end up being partners, right? Yeah. One thing that we haven't really talked about is how Harvey Dent sort of played into this equation, like here and there throughout the story, right? Like
background, the clean prosecutor, the clean, you know, assistant district attorney, that's trying to, like, from the opening, you get that he's the one, even before Gordon gets there, that's trying to clean up the city.
Right.
Because, you know, there's a thing at the beginning, where he had to withdraw charges on Commissioner Lowe because a witness disappeared or whatever. And it's like,
right.
So, yeah, and he's just in the background. And you see, like, there's that one scene you were talking about, like, where he's working with Batman even before Gordon is.
Right. So he's technically aiding Batman while Gordon thinks that he's potentially a suspect to be Batman.
Right.
But he's got alibis for everything, just like Bruce has alibis for everything. I like that line that he kept going back to. He's like, I need to know where your whereabouts on the following dates.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about that scene. You know, I mean, I don't want to skip over it too much, but you know, issue 4 of the story, the final issue, issue Batman 407, starts out with essentially Sarah Essen being removed from the equation. You know, right. He has a conversation with her. He says, you know, can't really do this anymore. She has to file for a transfer, and she's going to end up leaving Gotham. And then he finally gets his interview with Bruce after like weeks of basically bullshit, you know, from the Bruce Wayne camp, right? Like he's been skiing, or you know, or like he's been holed up with, you know, whatever celebrity actress of the moment. So he finally gets there and sort of does his own thing and has his intuition. And as he's leaving, he makes some sort of comment like, what is it, like he's sure acting like he's you know, like a stereotypical you know, whatever, like playboy, right? But it's a little, but he has his suspicions, right?
Yeah, and a pig, and he's like, he's sure acting like one, but anyone who'd wear a cape to hunt criminals would go pretty far to keep their secrets.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then that's what makes him feel guilty to confess to his wife, which leads to a panel later on where, you know, I think, you know, Flass and his goons are like calling the house, threatening to release the pictures or whatever that they have, right? Because there was a scene where they were trying to blackmail Gordon essentially for him to because he wouldn't pump the brakes on Skeevers and trying to essentially clean out clean out the dirt internally, right?
Right. Well, Skeevers is basically giving them Flash at this point, and they're trying to like do damage control because Flash knows way too much.
Yep. And then what else? Like, I mean, at that point, we're almost drawing to the conclusion of the story. You do see some more sort of Catwoman Batman action.
Yeah.
Catwoman is becoming more, I guess, bold in her crimes.
Yeah.
Like that, and she robbed. Who did she rob? She robbed the commissioner of his collectibles or whatever. Like.
Yeah, it's like she robbed my house. He got like a bunch of Funko.
Yeah, exactly. And then you see a scene where Batman is essentially staking out Falcone, and Falcone's talking to his nephew Johnny, and before he gets like the full details of whatever scheme or plan they have cooking up, Catwoman enters the scene because she wanted to make it a point to like scar Falcone in the face because she was pissed off that the media thinks that she works for Batman or whatever, and that still ended up backfiring because like after that whole like situation went down, they were like Batman's assistant, like yeah.
Assistant. Now I'm an assistant. Yeah, she's all mad because she's being considered his assistant.
But that leads essentially to sort of the dramatic conclusion, right? Which is all centered around Detective Gordon's family and a kidnapping, which is pretty crazy. A pretty crazy way to close out the story, and all ends well. Batman, Bruce Wayne comes to the rescue on a motorcycle, and he gets shot for his efforts by Gordon in what is it, like a parking garage or something, and then Barbara Gordon comes face to face with him, and he's like, I won't let anything happen to your son. And then so she lets him go, or because she ended up picking up the gun, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, she picked it up and had it on, but lets him go.
Right, and then he ends up saving the baby on the bridge after the accident on the bridge,
right?
And he walks away from the crime with where Gordon has that sort of classic line where he's like, I can barely see without my glasses. I think you better go, or whatever.
Yeah, because he's lost his glasses in the scuffle with Johnny, and he's basically practically blind. You better go. And in the movie, they have it. It's a nice shot because they show from Gordon's view, but not just is he blurry, but he's also like the sun is like setting behind him.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't. He's really backlit, and you can't see. He's just a shadow. I mean, at that point, Gordon. But yeah, it is a really cool scene of, if Gordon really wanted to and his wife really wanted to, they could figure out who he is. But because he saved their kid, they just let him go.
Yeah.
And that ends with, and that basically is the end. There's like one more page showing the fallout of Flash basically being smarter than anybody knew because he'd kept all the notes, and the commissioner getting, basically having to resign, and Gordon basically, it ends up, I got a friend coming who might be able to help because he mentions that there's
he makes some sort of tease about there's a guy who wants to like blow up the reservoir or something called Joker. And then I have a guy coming here to help out. He should be here any second now or something like that.
Should be here any minute. And then I don't think they have this in the actual issue, but I do love how like in the trade, after he says that line, like it ends with the bat signal.
That's a great page, yeah.
It's just a great piece of art.
It is a great piece of art.
And kind of a classic one, and very similar to the one they used like on the front of the Year One movie. So
Man, I wish I had a hard copy of it. I mean, I have obviously I have the subscription to the DC streaming app, so I can watch it whenever I want on there. But sometimes it's cool just to have a hard copy, even for movies. Like I love, Bake the Snake is back. He said he had to grab some snacks. That's his thing.
So I'm not sure we got a ton of people in the chat at the moment, but a few. And so we talked about it kind of at the beginning.
So we did favorite cover. What about favorite issue?
Honestly, I think it's number 1. I think it's the first issue.
It's number 1 for me too, man. We're on the same page. Yeah.
So much, they set up so much.
So much happened. It's just so much happened in that issue.
I think that it's, we go through all of it. I mean, that first issue, you set up everything Gordon's dealing with. You have the showdown with Flash already, and then you get all the way through, and an ending with that, the bat coming through the glass.
Yeah.
Him realizing its purpose.
Just the total amount of character progression from the page 1 to page 30 or 28 or whatever, for both Bruce Wayne and Gordon in issue 1 moves the Batman needle more than any other single issue of Batman. So, in my opinion, for me, that's not only my favorite issue of the run, but it's possibly my favorite Batman issue ever.
It is definitely one of the better ones.
So we got a couple more people join the chat here. We got Retro Savage, what's up, man? And we got RLM's Comics and Collectibles. What's up, Russ? How you doing?
Now, Bake disagreed with us. He went with cover 1. That was from our earlier discussion, which it is a truly classic cover. But
yeah, it is a classic cover. But for as far as cover artwork, I gotta go with number 2.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So,
but story, issue 1.
Issue 1 is definitely my favorite story.
And then where do you? I mean, you may have a definitive answer, but where do you rank this Batman story arc among all the Batman story arcs that you've personally read?
Of the ones I've read, it is absolutely top 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while since I've read them. It had been a while since I read this, but it might be number 1. I need to reread a couple of them again.
Yeah, I hear that. For me, it's definitely number 1. But I've only read the Long Halloween 1 time, or maybe 2 times.
So Long Halloween would be a contender.
Definitely be a contender for me too.
And see, I think Hush is probably a distant third for me.
Yeah, so, Hush is on my list also, but
yeah, I think it would be more in the third kind of area. It really comes down to those 2 probably for me more than any others. But and there's so many I haven't read, but of the ones I've read, those would probably be my 2.
So we're talking about Year 1 and Long Halloween. So speaking of Long Halloween, that's going to be the focus of the second episode of.
Wait, you mean that?
Yeah.
Long Halloween?
Long Halloween. So it's going to be on your channel. You want to share the details? I mean, we'll obviously let our social media audiences and everything know as well.
But put it out on Instagram, and we'll probably do a reminder on YouTube and that kind of stuff. But our thought is next episode, we're going to talk about the Long Halloween. It's going to be another Monday night, same time. But it's going to be, 3 weeks from now, April 29th.
Monday, April 29th, but on JP's budget collecting channel.
It'll be on we're just going to rotate between channels. So it'll be on my channel on April 29th, 9 Eastern. We'll keep the time the same, or at least try to, and may have to adjust as we get closer, but plan is to keep it the same time.
Should work for me.
Yeah, it should work. And yeah, so I think right off the bat, we'll be definitely dealing with 2 of my all-time favorite Batman stories, and sounds like for you as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think Long Halloween's is a solid number 2 for me, if maybe number 3, arguably.
Yeah.
But it's both are in my top 5 Batman. So
definitely both top 5, I think. And so, but that is definitely the plan
Bake says he'll be in an endgame coma.
Well, I've seen it like 3 times by that point. So
Me too. Dude, I got tickets. So, when tickets first went on sale, I was only able to get tickets for like an 11 p.m. showing or something like that because everything else was like sold out.
right.
Like right away. And I was there at the beginning too, and it was still sold out right away. But today I was able to snag 7 p.m. Thursday tickets. So like literally like one of the first people in the country in the public to see it. Thursday night, 7 p.m. And the only reason I was able to do that is because a brand new theater opened up in New York City in the Lower East Side after tickets went on sale last week. So nobody knew, so everybody slept on this theater because it didn't exist when tickets went on sale last week, and it exists now. So I'm like, oh shit, I gotta go snag up these tickets. So I did that. So I'm pretty happy I won't have to come back for like 4 a.m. after the movie.
No, it would be nice. The nice thing about living in a small town is I will be able to get tickets day of.
Right.
So they'll do 3 or 4 showings, and I won't. I've never had any trouble getting tickets like night of. Really have to maybe like order them sometime that day for that night, or maybe the night before. But yeah,
I haven't gotten rid of I haven't gotten a refund or exchanged my 11 o'clock tickets yet. Yeah. I might roll right into the 11 o'clock and like see it twice in a row. I have no clue yet. I'm waiting. Like the first time with all this pressure, and the second time like no pressure, I can go take a leak or whatever. I don't know.
Just enough time for a bathroom break between them, because it's what, 3 hours, and
well, it's also at different theaters. So one's on the 7 o'clock shows on the Lower East Side, Manhattan, and the 11 o'clock shows in Brooklyn downtown. So,
so you have time for a bathroom.
But I live in Brooklyn, so the second one would be like walking distance from where I live. So but that's probably not going to happen. I think 1 3-hour movie in one night is going to be more than enough to put me to exhaustion.
Yeah, so, I can imagine. Hours is I will never make it through a 3-hour movie without needing a restroom break.
Really, I can definitely make it. But I'm not gonna sit there and pretend like it's not going to be uncomfortable. Like by the end of it, I will probably be uncomfortable, but
I'll just have to not drink anything.
Yeah, I don't drink anything or eat anything when I see these movies like for the first time. I never risk it.
Yeah.
So all right. So any final parting thoughts about Frank Miller's Batman Year One? I mean, certainly one of the most seminal Batman stories, one of the most impactful stories to DC continuity for about 30 years. Impactful to the rest of the Batman pop culture universe, especially the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy of films. Yeah. I don't. Interesting tidbit. I don't know if you know this, but back in year 2000 or so, Warner Brothers internally had greenlit a project to do a straight up film adaptation of Year One, like to do Batman Year One live action movie. And Joss Whedon made a pitch, like some other big directors made a pitch, and they actually ended up hiring Darren Aronofsky to write and direct it, which is a huge, filmmaker.
Right.
But less than 2 years later, they had shelved the project for whatever internal politics or reasonings. So,
well, yeah, I thought I knew that originally, that was my understanding, was originally that's what this was supposed to be. Was almost a straight up adaptation of this, but when they gave it to Nolan, he took it his own direction.
Yeah, he took it his own direction. He definitely had some like homages to it, though. In there.
So I don't know if you caught at Bake the Snake earlier today, and he's just talking about it. I assume that's talking about he read it for the first time last week, because that he.
Dude, no judgment here, man. I mean, the story came out 32 years ago. Like I said, not everyone is gonna have read it.
So, Bake, that was a hardback, wasn't it? But he has on his stream today. He picked up a hardback of Year One, and it's a first print.
I know. I saw that he whipped that out on our direct edition squad last night.
Oh,
and
I might have been.
I got super jelly. Like I didn't say it out loud, but I was like, God damn you! Like now I got to go hunt the first print hardcover because I need every single possible goddamn copy of this story. You know, like.
I am definitely like one of the next Batman centric books I'm after is to pick up the 4 individual issues of this.
Yeah, man. I mean, like these are really high grade. Like some of these.
I just want them. So
yeah, like some of these could come back, 9.0 and higher, 9.4, 9.6.
Yeah, and that's what I'll be looking for because I have this to read.
Yeah.
And I'll probably wear this out because I've already read it like literally 3 times since we talked about doing this, and then tonight I read the first 2 chapters again before we go on air.
I think I've read it over 10 times. I read it, and in the past week or two, week and a half, while I was sick, I definitely read it twice. In preparation for this show to some degree, and also just because it's one of the books I kind of always read when I'm sick, like. Just because I know how to get through it super quickly, but also digest it and enjoy it. Yeah, man, it's
big bragging about his $10 deal. I tell you what.
Oh man, that's a good deal.
It was a good deal. That's awesome.
Later, Russ RLM Collectibles has got to run.
RLMs, yeah. So definitely, like I said, I hadn't read this. We talked about it earlier. I read this originally around 2010, and I read it a couple times then digitally, and I had not read it since. I'd watched this a couple times since, but I had not read this until we decided to do this since I really got those digital copies. So
yeah, I mean, I've had like ratty reader copies of the 4 issues for quite a while, but I've had I've had 3 different trade paperbacks of it. One was an early, and then this is the latest printing I have. But this is the second copy of the latest printing I have because I destroyed the other one. It got all bent up and like beaten up because it's like I often travel with year 1 with me, so yeah, a little bit obsessed.
Well, I will probably be taking this with me to Chicago to read.
There you go. I'm going to bring some Star Wars specific stuff, I think, with me to Chicago, just because I want to totally immerse myself in the Star Wars experience. Like while I'm going there, while I'm there, just the whole time, I kind of want to just get lost in Star Wars. But that should be fun. So looking forward to saying what's up. And also looking forward to episode 2 of Gotham City Chronicles, Monday, April 29th on Jason's channel. So,
all right.
All right, man.
I don't think I have anything else.
I think we're about in an hour here, so we appreciate everyone for stopping by. It was busy there for a second, then it got slow there, then it got busier, then it got slow. But anybody who catches this on the replay, let us know what you think. What do you think of this storyline? Where does it rank for you? What's your favorite cover? What's your favorite issue? What do you think about the Long Halloween? What other stories would you like us to see us do on this show? So that's going to do it. So have a good night, guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Later, guys.
Later, everyone.